What's up, y'all? G from G Blades, and we are back in the shop, and we have the leather sheath for our Harley Davidson themed knife all put together. These edges are not perfect. I could take the time to actually cut them dead nuts perfect with each other, but it just seems to be a lot faster to me if you can rough it in, get it clamped together. I do use a homemade Kydex press. That I got the products from Kydex Infusions. Everything worked out really well. Squeezes leather together really well too, so it also gives me a chance to put the materials together, glue it, and then clamp it to make sure that everything does stay together in one piece. And we just use Tanner's Bond, which is just contact cement, around the edges to be able to put everything together. Now I'm going to go on my Ameribraid Fastback 2x72 belt grinder with a fresh, clean, super sharp 80 grit belt, and this is going to give me a chance to be able to shape everything nice and efficiently and get it nice and clean and happy. And then we're going to get ready to cut our stitches in, but first we're going to mark all the way around so that we know exactly where we're going to be putting those stitches, and then we're going to be able to stitch them in a nice straight line. Here we go. All right, so now that we are over at another bench, we have our finished sheath as far as the shape. So it worked out really well. We have nice clean lines all the way around, and this will also give me a chance to be able to groove it nice and smooth and straight as well. We're gonna do that with a groover tool. If you're gonna use this tool, make sure it's nice and tight. Otherwise, it can slip and it can make the groove kind of go off kilter as far as where exactly it is that you want it. We're going to groove that through all the way around. We're going to use some stitching forks then to punch the stitch holes. I want to keep them waxed the whole time. Makes them easier to come out of the leather after we hammer them in. And then I'm going to be using a hole punch as well, because I'm going to put a lanyard hole at the bottom of this to add additional retention and allow the customer to be able to tie it off to make sure that the knife can't go anywhere at all while they are on their motorcycle. So here we go. So now that all of our stitch holes are punched, ready to rock and roll, we're going to clamp it in a vise, and this will give us a chance to be able to put it upright like this, and then we'll start stitching. This is going to be two separate stitches because we do have a lanyard hole, and we're going to need to put a hollow rivet in there as well, again for our lanyard. And then we'll do some edge dyeing, and she's just about ready to rock and roll, and then we're going to form it to the knife itself. So here we go. All right, so now that the leather is all nice and shaped, we're gonna get ready to stitch this bad boy. We're just gonna be using some standard stitching needles and some black dyed thread. Did already bevel the edges with our edge beveler. So she's re-beveled, ready to rock and roll. We're gonna get the stitches in there. The way that we do this is we're gonna put two needles on. Only about 1.5 inches of the thread is gonna go through the needle eye itself. And then the rest of it, we're just going to keep nice and loose. Flatten the edge of the thread. Get it started in there. It only needs to go in about that much. About 1 inch, 1.5 inches. And then most of my sheaths that are a single stitch all the way around are almost a little bit more than a wingspan of mine. So it's about 6 foot. I don't need 6 foot here, so I'm going to aim for probably about 4 foot. We'll cut this, put the other needle on here, and then we're gonna get this bad boy stitched together. Here we go. Okie dokie. So now that this one whole side is stitched, I have done 2 lock stitches, which really is just standard stitch, only you just go backwards back onto itself. So it does double up the stitches, so you can see that side's done. Still got a little extra thread, no big deal. We're gonna be cutting that off right there with just a X-Acto knife, craft knife, whatever you wanna call it. So this way, we can cut it off nice and clean. And then we are going to put our needles on a new piece of thread. And we'll get this other side done. Get it all squared away. All right, so now that our leather sheath is all put together, we're gonna take our knife, we're gonna wrap it in some plastic wrap to prevent it from absorbing any moisture or anything like that. And then we are going to saturate the leather sheath, and it'll take it from nice and stiff like this, and it'll make it very soft. And we're gonna wet form the leather sheath, and we're gonna use a Kydex press to do that. So it'll give us the rough form. And then after it gets the basic shape, I will take the knife out of the sheath itself, and then it's going to be cured the rest of the way to get it nice and dried. After it's dried the second time, then we're gonna go into like 200-degree liquid paraffin wax. So you gotta be really careful on the temperature because it can damage the leather if it's too hot. But we're gonna use just an old crock pot, and we are going to saturate this leather completely with liquid paraffin wax, and that'll actually absorb into the leather and prevent it from absorbing any additional moisture later on. It'll help it hold its shape, and it'll make it waterproof. So stay tuned, we're gonna get right into it. All right, so we got our knife all wrapped up enough that it'll prevent the moisture from getting to it, and we got our nice stiff dyed leather sheath here. So now we're gonna spray a bottle of water here. I'm gonna fill it all the way up with water to let as much moisture absorb into the leather as possible. And then we're gonna get the knife in there nice and smooth, and then we'll kind of start to form it, and then we're gonna jump it into our Kydex press, let it cure for long enough for the leather to hold that shape. Here we go. Feels pretty good. I like the fact that we're getting some definition out of the hand gouges there as well. And the blade is sitting in far enough that I definitely feel good about how deep it's going to be sitting. Next step that we're going to take is we're actually going to get our leather sheath and put the strap in there, wet the strap as well, wrap that around there, and then she's all going to go into the Kydex press and let it conform to the knife, and let the strap conform to the handle as well. All right, so now that we were over at the Kydex press, normally I would use a nice aggressive thick hardy foam that would be on here, but we're just forming leather, so we're gonna use a little bit softer foam. So we're not gonna use this top, we're actually gonna use a different top. And this has much softer foam in it, so this will let it conform nice and easily, and I can shape the entire knife in there. All we gotta do is snip it. All right. All right, so now that the leather sheath is all formed, we're gonna let this form for a little while before we finish curing the sheath, and then we're gonna wax dip it. So one more step to come. Stay tuned. All right. So our sheath is looking very nice. Dig it, looking good. Nice and shaped to the knife. Even got some nice contour. You can see the gut hook cut out in there. I'm quite happy with this. So from here, we are going to take it all the way out to our nice warmed up dehydrator. And now we'll take the knife out We'll set the entire sheath in the dehydrator, and it'll let it fast cure, and then into liquid paraffin wax, which we will check the temperature of before we go into it. All right, y'all, we got our sheath all nice and cured here. It is quite rigid, quite dry, not overly cured where it's starting to shrink up real bad, but it is nice and solid. So we are quite happy with that. Let's get some more lighting over, huh? All right, so now that it is nice and cured and dry, we got our wax right here, and this is already nice and warm. So we're gonna kind of stick our strap on there. Still have some final assembly to get together here, but it is nice and rigid. So it's gonna soften up a lot as we get into our wax. So here we go. Bulk of the wax already off the sheath. We're gonna put our knife back in there, nice and tight this time. No protection between the knife and the sheath. We don't really want anything there at all anyways. Long term, we want a nice tight fit. So after the knife has been reinstalled in there, we're gonna give it another good wipe down, make sure as much of our excess wax is off there as possible, which we'll be going through again later. Then we're gonna clamp this bad boy in our Kydex press once again with our soft foam to get it to form nice and tight against the actual blade. Woo! Almost dropped it. Oh yeah! So we got our fully formed, wax dipped leather sheath. Super hard, dig it. Very rigid at the moment. Nice and tight to pull out of there. So this process will now allow the leather sheath to be completely waterproof. It'll hold its shape. We're gonna throw a couple rivets in here to hold on and ulti-clip. And then we're gonna add a lanyard on the bottom. But first, we're gonna get over to our buffer. So we got an Eastwood buffer here, good stuff. It might not seem like the ideal place to be with a leather sheath, but there's a tool that we're gonna use called a burnishing stick. And this will allow us, when rubbed back and forth, to get a nice clean finished edge on there. But we can do that a little bit more efficiently. So we're gonna get rid of the hand one and take our handy dandy power burnisher. Put this on our buffer, and now time to power burnish. Okay, so now that our entire leather sheath is all nice and burnished, did use a little bit of beeswax on there, and that gives me a chance to get some extra waterproofing into the edge, and that'll work out really well for longevity. We did also take the strap out so that we could power stroke the strap, or we could power burnish the strap. And now we're going to get a chance to be able to both install the snaps and the rivets that are going to hold the ulti-clip, wrap this sheath up, nice little package. All we got left to do is sharpen the knife. All right, so now that we have the sheath complete, we have our ulti-clip on the back. There's one of the most secure clips you can get, which is awesome. We got a nice stainless steel snap on the strap itself, and we have a lanyard on the bottom so you can tie it off. So the last thing that we do have to do is finish touching up the knife, bring the whole package together, put an edge on it. She'll be all ready to rock and roll here very shortly. Stay tuned, y'all.